Okay, so the imperfect information version of the model, the idea is that you've got a household. So again, now you're gonna see why this is how this model is gonna work, and it's all about trying to make sure that firms don't know everything. So how does this gonna work? The household itself is gonna be a firm. So each household is gonna own a firm, but then also consume. Okay, so the household's gonna have two members. It's gonna have one person that produces, and it's going to have one person that shops. Now, why do we want to do that? It's because we want the producer to only be able to see the price of what they're selling. So the producer is sitting at the farmer's market and sees the price for their own good at the farmer's market, whereas the shopper is shopping maybe at a different market, and the shopper can see the prices of all the goods, but can't tell that information to the producing member. So you can see it's a bit strained already, but the idea is you want to separate the information so that the producer and the shopper don't have the same knowledge. Okay. Um, yeah, and then uh, why is it that we have each household being a firm itself rather than just saying we have firms and we have households and they're different? It has to do with labor supply. So we want the firms to be we want each household sort of labor supply to be related to what they think is going on at the household firm, basically. Anyway, so again, imperfect information. The producer has to sort of guess what's the aggregate price. They only see their own price, and then they decide how much they want to produce. The consumers, they're going to get product specific demand shocks, right? So it means that every so often there's a demand shock for pumpkins from my stall relative to your stall. Um, that's one thing that can change my price. Another thing that can happen is that the government can overall print money. That's going to cause everybody's prices to go up. Okay, and then like we said a second ago, if I see my price go up, I'm not sure whether the government printed money or it was my own shock. So since I can't be sure, I'm just gonna raise my production a little bit, not as much as I would do if I knew it was a shock, a demand shock from my own good, but also not zero like I would do if I was sure that it was just an overall price level rise. Okay, so that's going to cause money to have real effects. Okay, so now here's where you're going to see the way the labor works out. So this is going to be very similar to the menu cost model. The only difference is that there's no labor market with like an external wage. Okay, so that's kind of the key. That's why we actually need to have this household firm thing, because the wage level would contain information about the price level. Okay, so we don't want the producer to be able to look at wages and then infer the overall price level. So we assume that there's no external labor market. Each producer is sort of only deciding how much each household member is, how much this producer is going to work themselves. Okay. We're also going to assume that producers are price takers, right? So the producer knows the price for their own good. The only choice they have to make is how much labor do they want to supply, right? Production function is going to be just the same as in the other model, in the menu cost model. It's going to be one-to-one for labor to output. And the household producer, right, is going to maximize utility. All right, so how does that utility work? They get more utility from consumption. It's linear here, by the way. And they get less utility from working. Okay, so the more labor that the producer supplies, the less happy he is. So, and the more the producer consumes, the more happy he is. Okay, so that's how it works. And then finally, consumption has to equal total revenue, if you like, total income from selling the good, divided by the price level. Okay. And how do we get that? We got that because, well, okay, so here's one constraint, is that the consumption has to equal total revenue divided by price. And then also, this is a constraint too, this is the production function saying that the quantity that I produce has to equal the labor that I supply. Okay, so let's substitute, of course, as I mentioned, firms in this model producers are price takers. So what we want to do here is instead of in the menu price model where firms were trying to choose their price level, we're going to take the prices both PI and big P is given. And here I'm saying given big P in capital letters because at the end of the chapter, firms aren't going to know big P. But suppose they knew big P, what would be their optimal production? Well, you can solve this problem. Basically, you can just plug, let's see here, that's the right way to do it. This is Li has to be equal to Q. So plug in a Q here. Let's just do it. We could do this. Pi Qi divided by P minus 1 divided by gamma, not L, Q, Qi to the power gamma. Okay, so this is now the utility function, and I've used the property that Li is equal to Qi. Okay, so now we want to maximize this thing with respect to Qi because the producer is going to choose how much to produce, Qi, but can't change the prices. The producer is going to be a price taker. Okay, so what's that going to look like? Well, we're going to take the derivative with respect to Q, and we get this thing, which you can see is exactly what we have down here. This thing has to equal 0, of course. Solve that out, and you're going to get this relationship that the optimal production is just equal to the price ratio between Pi and P. Okay, and this makes sense. Let's think about the intuition behind this statement. So gamma here is just some parameter that's greater than 1, which means it's sort of like the disutility of working extra more. So it's like the higher is gamma, the less I like providing one more unit of labor. You can see this thing's going to become very, very concave. Right, so it's going to be very steep. So that's going to govern sort of how much my quantity that I produce is going to react to differences in the price in my relative price. So in particular, if you imagine that gamma is very, very high, it means that basically the quantity I produce is going to be unrelated to the difference in the relative prices. Why is that? Because it's very painful for me to work more. So I don't care how different the prices are, how much higher my price is, I don't want to work any extra hours. On the other hand, suppose that this gamma is very close to 1, it means that a little tiny change in Pi relative to P is going to have a big effect on the quantity that I supply because I don't mind working so much. That's kind of the logic there. But generally, if my price is higher than the average price, if you like, I'm calling this the price level, but you can think about it as an average price, then I'm going to produce more, right? And then I'll just say this last thing. In this whole chapter, whenever we have an uppercase, that means the level of a variable. When we have a lowercase variable, that means it's going to be the log of the level. Okay, so you can see here we've got Qi is equal to Pi divided by P. Take the logs. We're going to have log of big Qi is equal to, taking that power down, 1 divided by gamma minus 1. And then, of course, logs are going to change division into subtraction. So the log of Pi minus the log of P.